Welcome to We and Lewis, a show dedicated to celebrating the remarkable, creative, and energetic people who live in Lewis and are helping our community rise above all the usual divisions, negativity, and angst you can find anywhere in this country and forge a community soul that is as appealing as it is unique. They are the We in Lewis. I'm Kevin McGinnis. Our guest today is Jeff West, an interior designer with clients up and down the East Coast, the owner of the boutique Jeff West Home in downtown Lewis, host and producer of the J List on YouTube television, and an active member of our community. Today's episode is brought to you by the sister restaurants Kindle and Half Full, both in downtown Lewis. Between the two, you can find wine, pizza, steaks, and fish, indoor and outdoor dining, and a welcoming ambiance that never disappoints, and the food is remarkable. Of course, we're also very lucky that we still have permission to record our show at Kindle. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kevin. It's great to be here.
Someone once described your store as the sort of secret treasure, overflowing with style and good taste, you might expect to find in Soho, not in Lewis, Delaware. How did you come to open your store in Lewis?
It was really a fluke, Kevin. Honestly, I had had a boutique in Rehoboth from 2008 until 2013. And I had seen an article in USA Today on the death of the retail boutique, and I just made a snap decision that I was done. I would just stick with design. I went ahead and I closed. And life happened, years went on, and I ended up here in downtown Lewis, and the owner of a boutique walked out of her shop one day and said, "Would you like to reopen your Jeff West Home store?" And she said, "I have to get out of the lease. I have 8 months left." And I thought, oh, gosh. Well, I've got some things in storage I need to get rid of. I know, I'll do a pop-up. I'll help her out. What the heck? I'll do it. And so I opened, and the response was more than I thought it would be. And the next thing I knew, I was on my way, and I was back in the retail business. Whoever would have thought? And that's been almost 6 years ago now.
Wow.
So this store has been open technically longer than the last one. And I guess the universe had other plans.
And then it's not like there was a big, long business plan and marketing and consideration and months of prep. There's just a spontaneous question and answer.
Pretty much. This is show business as far as I'm concerned. So I don't, it sounds very prudent to have a business plan and to do all of those things. And that works very well for some people. But I think a creative business like I'm in or anything like that, you have to leave a lot of play in your steering wheel and just kind of go by rote and feel it out month by month and see how it's going. Watch the ratings, as they say in the TV business.
What's the J List?
The J List was started right after I closed the shop as a way of keeping myself in view. I was doing a blog, and I hated all of the typing and the whole thing, and some young men down here said, "You should do a video where you film yourself." And I said, "Oh, I don't want to look at myself on television or anything." And they said, no, let's try it. So they filmed them, and I came up with things to do. And I thought, what do I call this? And I said, how about the J List? Instead of being an A-lister, you can be a J Lister. So that's how that started. And we would film them, and then that went on for several years. And I would do them for holidays and different seasons.
And I think they're still available.
They're still available on YouTube. If you go way back and brush the dust off, you can probably find a few of them. I haven't done one in the last couple of years. I have a lot of clients and customers say, you need to do that. But I just need to find somebody to hold the camera, I guess.
Well, many of us in town know you through your store. I don't think all of us appreciate your interior design business extends up and down the East Coast, from D.C. to Cape Cod, even on to Maine. How would you describe your approach to interior design?
You pull the fabrics and pray to God. I think you just, something, I liken it to being a cook. Tell me what you want to eat and I'll make it for you. That's kind of how I look at it. You're the menu, your client is the customer. So my approach to it, you meet the person, you see their home. Automatically, it clicks in your head what needs to be done. They have a version of what needs to be done. You have a version of what needs to be done. And you just try to mesh those two versions together. Of course, there's always a husband standing nearby with dollar signs, above his head.
I've actually played that role
Have
in
you played
several
that
movies.
role? Then
yes.
you can feel it. So that's what we do. And you can pretty much tell if it's a good fit. It has to be a good fit, especially at this time in my life. It just has to be a good fit. You just don't want to do it for the money. You want to do it for the beauty of it and the fact that you really improve the quality of that person's life and the stage they live on. Your home's the stage you play your life out on. It should be beautiful. It's important.
Going back to what you just said, my grandfather once gave me some really valuable business advice. He said, never try to sell a Mercedes to a man hell-bent on buying a Yugo. For those under 50, a Yugo was a small, cheap, no-frills hatchback made in Yugoslavia. I'm guessing this comes up in your profession as well.
Yeah, well, that's what the meeting's about. If you want to drive a Yugo, you got the wrong guy. So I usually try to weed that out pretty quick. And you feel bad sometimes, but it's better for them too. If it's not a good fit, they'll find someone who is.
So you meet with someone,
mm-hmm.
You see their house, you see what they have. Does it all? What is the creative process? Can you just literally look at the space and start thinking of things, or how do you develop it?
You have to listen to them. You really have to listen to them, find out where they're coming from. Interior design is extremely emotional for people. We used to joke in my previous career, you not only need to have the ability to do it, you need a PhD in psychiatry because you're doing a lot of hand-holding. And that's not meant as an insult to anyone. It's the truth. It's an emotional thing. And so when I'm doing it, I can see it kind of drop into place. I'm a visual thinker, of course, have to be. And I just sort of think about, well, what do you need to do? It snowballs. You know what I find happens a lot of time with clients? You think you're going to do just a little bit, and they see it getting done, and they love it, and then they want more and more and more, and then the next thing you know, you're moving to the second floor, and you're doing other rooms, and that's really gratifying, because then you're watching them unfold while you're watching the house unfold. And I think
so when you get hired, it's often just for a room as opposed to
sometimes,
the whole house?
Sometimes. I have some wonderful clients now, and I've been fortunate with them because they're ready to work. They don't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. If you have 1 foot out, you might as well have both feet out, because and that's probably true in any business. You've got to have people who are engaged and ready to meet you halfway.
Sometimes do people come with you and they want you to redo a living room, but they have a favorite chair they want you to incorporate, and that chair is going to be completely wrong with everything else you're trying to do.
You know what I do? That chair you're talking, I always try to pretend it's a sculpture. So that's where upholsterers come in handy. You can take anything and make it look much better if you redress it. But that does happen sometimes. But you know what also happens? When you do the whole room around it, and then they see that chair, then they say, doesn't belong in here, doesn't fit. And then you're like, oh, thank God. Then you can move it upstairs, or you can put it someplace where it will fit. Yeah.
So sometimes you let the process take care of it.
I'm hoping I don't have a client listening to this that had one of those chairs. I can't think of it.
Your work's been featured in, and I'm going to get through the whole list, the Washington Post, Coastal Living, Cottage Style, Chesapeake Life, Delaware Beach Life, Delaware Today, and the Cape Gazette. And those are the only ones I could find. I think the list is actually more extensive. And you've been on television shows. That has to be an amazing tribute for anyone who's engaged in a creative activity.
Well, thank you. I never thought of it as a tribute. It all started with the Washington Post. They came and did a story they would do a story every summer on beach houses down here. And a very dear friend of mine said, go to my friend's house over on Rodney. And they did. And I thought, they won't use this for sure. They won't use this. And they did. And it took 2 days, and they were wonderful about the whole thing. And I was thrilled to death. And that was kind of how it started. Then where I worked in Washington, D.C., I was in charge of all their photo shoots for the magazines. And one of the photographers said, I'm coming to Lewis this weekend. I'll stop and see you at your cottage. And I said, okay. And she did. And she came in and she ran back to get her camera. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I've got to take some shots." I said, "Oh, no, please don't do that. No, just shut up," she said. So she came back and she took shots. And I said, "Lisa, I'm not ready. Wait a minute." And, she said, "Just leave everything alone and let me take the pictures." So she did. I said, "No one's going to put this in anything." About 2 months later, she said, "Coastal Living's going to do it." I was in shock. So, okay, they came the following year and did it. And it came out maybe another year later. And that just sort of got the ball rolling. And after that, if somebody asked me, I always said yes. I thought, I'm not going to say no. An actor doesn't say no to parts. A dentist doesn't say no to new patients. So I'll take them. I'll take them all.
Now, did the Washington Post spread lead to another job?
It did inadvertently. When I worked in D.C. For the Kellogg Collection, it was a wonderful company, still is. I really did their floor displays and window designs and that kind of thing. And I did some design and then quit. Well, one day they called me upstairs and said, would you be willing to do a design job in partnership with one of our designers, who was a real sweet friend of mine? I said, okay, why? It's the Washington Post's Don Graham. It's his wife, Mary Graham. It's their home in Woods Hole. Would you help on this project? Sure, if you'll let me. That means I won't be here to do the things I'm normally here to do. So Debbie and she had already done beautiful work for them and started it. And I helped out every way I could. And we flew up for the install. And it was a fascinating day. She was a lovely person, and it was a beautiful home. And she did a really interesting thing I thought was cute. Around that house in Woods Hole, she had a glass artist come in, and he would etch clovers onto the corner of the glass in the window panes. And it was a game for the grandchildren, because one of them was a 4-leaf clover somewhere in one of the rooms in this big house. And they would wander all over the house trying to find the 4-leaf clover on the window. Oh, wow. And I thought that was a cute idea. And she loved doorknobs too. And so we put them up the staircase, random doorknobs, and she hung her hats on them as she went down. It was effective, and I liked it. So, yeah.
Well, if you're going to have to do work for someone in Washington, D.C., the Graham family is not a bad place to start.
The Graham family wasn't. I always admired Katharine Graham. I'd read her biography and had actually seen her one time at an event in D.C., but I didn't speak to her. And this was probably 4 years later. She had died, I think, the previous year. Anyway, so it was nice.
When you tell stories, there's always a little bit of a sense of humor lurking in the background. And I think you once had in your store window a pillow about the limits of latitude you were willing to give husbands.
Oh, there was a sign. It was the limits of latitude I think the wives were willing to give husbands. It said, it's in the window now. Husbands choosing paint colors or fabrics must present a signed note from their wives. I loved it.
Did people laugh?
I've seen more people out front taking pictures of that. That's on every Instagram. It's everywhere by now. And I just printed it on WordPerfect and stuck it in a plexi holder. But you know why I do that? You've got to have fun doing this. Design is supposed to be fun. Decorating is supposed to be fun. People are intimidated by it, and I understand it to a point. Probably expense reasons, first and foremost, and then fear they won't like it, if they start something. But you've got to laugh about this. I mean, you've got to have some fun. I had a pillow in my living room, and I sold it to someone. I wish I'd kept it. I had it specially made, and it was on my sofa. And it said, "Big fancy room filled with crap." One day, a client came in, and she brought a friend to show her my home. And the friend walked in ahead of her, saw the pillow, and read it out loud, and she thought her friend was actually saying that about my And she walked in my living room and said, "Big fancy room filled with crap." And her friend said, "Don't say that." I said, "She's reading my pillow. It's okay." But I think it disarms people from being intimidated by design and that kind of thing. And I want you to be comfortable. It's like a doctor having good bedside manner. You don't ever want to scare your patient, even if there is that chair in the room.
Do you find sometimes, given your proven level of taste, given the way you can analyze something at a mere glance, that if people have you over to the house, it's a little bit like having at dinner sitting next to a psychiatrist and knowing they're going, oh.
I want to sit next to a psychiatrist at dinner. You get a free session. I get that. Oh, I'll never have you to my house. Oh, I'll never. I know they mean that as a compliment, but in a way, it's a little insulting. Don't you think more of me than to worry about that? I'm here to see you. Now, we both know I'm redecorating quietly while I'm in my head. And they know, too. That's why I don't get invited anything. But they have me over, and it's fine. It's fine. Sometimes I'll give you free advice. I don't mind. You don't have to take it. You know?
When did you first realize you had taste?
I don't know that I ever realized it. I was, I tell this story. My whole interest in what I do, my whole whatever you want to call it, started with Halloween. When I was 5 years old, my mother went to a store and bought those cardboard decorations and taped them to the door. And I don't remember them until I came home with my father from getting a haircut. And that was it. I saw those decorations and I ran into the house and she had some packages of them there, I was ecstatic and excited and I was decorating and that started it. And I would every holiday want decorations. My poor mother, she was not somebody that did a lot of that kind of thing. But I could afford with allowance money to go to the 5 and 10 and buy a cardboard turkey to hang on the door in November or an Easter bunny. And that just kept it going. And that was all I could do when I was a child. And she, God bless my mother, she let me do it. And I know she didn't like some of the things I was doing. It was a lot sometimes. And I was sitting in a mall with my father, and we were looking into the Raleigh's men's store when I was 12 years old.
The Raleigh's men's store. That brings back memories.
And he said, there's a job you should do, Jeff. And I looked, and there was a man in one of the windows setting up a Christmas scene with branches and a suit for him. I said, they have a job where you just do that? He said, yeah, they call them window dressers. This would have been 1977, 78. And I remembered that. And I went on with life and then ended up at the, do you want me to tell that story? I don't want to ramble on too long here. Okay. Well,
the whole point of this show is for you to ramble on.
Oh, okay. All right. So I was with my sister. We went into a mall and my sister was late. I took her up there. We had one car when we were teenagers. And I drove her to the mall, and I was done, and she wasn't. She met me and said, I need another half an hour. And I was like, oh, God, okay, fine. And I wandered back into the Heck Company department store just to kill time. And as I went around a corner, there was a lady kneeling on the floor doing a display. And I said, there's one of those people. So I just decided to approach her. And as the old saying goes, by such slender threads hang our destinies. And she jumped up and said, do you want a job? And I said, yes. And here I was, a kid standing there in OP shorts and topsiders. I wasn't ready for an interview by a long shot. It was summertime. And she said, come with me right now. And I followed her down the escalator and back to the offices, and I was petrified. And she introduced me to the head of the visual merchandising department. And I proceeded to lie my way through an impromptu interview. I totally did. I lied through the whole thing. I told him I knew how to do this and I knew how to do that. And I remember that man smirking. And I thought, he knows I'm lying. I'm never going to have this job. What I didn't realize is this wonderful lady who's still a friend of mine, her name is Liz, standing behind me as she exited the office. And she was gesturing to me, pointing like he's the one. And about a week later, I hadn't heard anything. So I called them. And they said, yes, you got the job. Couldn't believe it. And I thought, they let me in. They let me into a big department store doing all this fashion and merchandising, and I don't know it. Okay, all right, West. Can't be clumsy now. And so I started. And I remember during the interview, the first thing he asked me, are you afraid of heights? And of course I was. And I said, no, not at all. The first job he gave me made me go get like a 14-foot ladder and climb to the ceiling in the housewares department. And I was shaking as I climbed all the way up above all those fixtures and people petrified. I think he was trying to smoke me out early, but I did it. And I learned so much. You know, I cry with the good memories of that job, because being a kid and coming up in that era, that was the last era of the department store. It's not quite there anymore.
No.
When they were doing beautiful work and I was learning things, they put me in men's fashion. And after a few years, they gave me the home department, and which I really wanted to do. And that's where you did all the bedding and the things for Ralph Lauren and Laura Ashley and the China and the whole thing. And I loved it. I loved it. And I learned so much from those people. It was the best thing I could have done. Lucky. It's about timing.
Did you ever ask Liz why she asked you if you wanted to jump so quickly? Because she didn't really know you, right?
No, she didn't know me at all. She said, I can still see you standing there. And she said, I had a hunch. I just had a hunch. And I thought, well, some hunch, thank God. So I guess I owe it to my sister for needing more shopping time, first and foremost. But I stayed 8 years, and I became a manager for them. Which basically meant you work overtime for free. But you got a carnation on your name tag. So that was
wow, there you go.
every day, yeah. But it was a lot of fun. You got to work with a lot of wonderful people, and there were a lot of events. I met Oscar de la Renta and Diane von Furstenberg, and it was very exciting.
You were, as far as your peers at the Heck Company, you were pretty young.
I was. This was another reason. I was surprised. Yeah. That was early to start, but I wanted to get into it, and there was no better way to get into it than to just do it. You know, it's a job you can't learn on paper, and you have to have a feel for it. You have to have, a natural ability for it, and I guess I did. But, you know, I used to like to paint and draw when I was a kid, but I'd rather work in 3-dimension. And that's true media for me from the standpoint of this craft. I wanted to work with the objects and compose scenes. And it all came back to being a kid and loving Christmas decorating. So I got the funniest story. The first season I worked for the Heck Company, we must have put up 45 Christmas trees. I joke to everybody now that I'm 150 years old in Christmas decorating years because I've put up more Christmas trees than, yeah. So I was so excited. We'd done Main Aisle, and it was sparkling, and blah, blah, blah. I came home, and I told my parents, and they said, well, we're going Christmas shopping. We're going to go up to the plaza. I said, okay. And they went to the store. And they got home 3 hours later, and I said, well, what did you think? And they said, about what? I said, Main Aisle. Oh, we didn't even notice. What? Your son's in this business, and you didn't even notice 45 sparkling Christmas trees down. Okay, great. Oh, well.
So you went from the Heck Company to Kellogg.
To the Kellogg collection. Another total fluke. They were really pushing us at the Heck Company to work a lot and go on what they used to call visits, where they would send you to another store, the entire display staff, and you'd be there for days and days and days, making the store look good for when Mr. Farrell came. And he was supposed to walk through and think it looked like this every day, when it really didn't. And we were getting tired of the hours, and as executives at that time, like I said, you worked for salary and you didn't get overtime. By 1993, they were pushing, and I got a memo that said, you will report to. And when I saw you will as a demand, that was it. And I quit. And I thought, you're not going to tell me I will report. No, it's not happening. So once you start that kind of push. Anyway, so I quit. I was walking around looking in the Kellogg collection. And interestingly enough, 2 years before that, I was walking through a Kellogg collection store with 2 Hex employees during a break. And I said, I'd love to do display for this store. And one of them laughed and said, oh, please, they don't hire display people in these kind of boutiques. These women who work here do it. And I said, well, you never know. And we walked out the door. 2 years later, I walked into that store, and I turned to one of the girls and I said, how come you don't hire boys? And everyone looked rather alarmed. And she said, do you want to work here? And I said, yeah, I do. And she said, well, here's a phone number. Call the DC store. So I went home and called the DC store, and it just happened that the owner picked the phone up, which she never did. She was on her way back from Starbucks, and everyone was busy, and she picked up the phone. And I said, I'm calling about having a job. I'd like to do displays for your branch stores. Oh, well, we don't have someone to do that. And she kind of put me off, and then she changed her tone and said, why don't you come in anyway? Can you come in tomorrow? And I said, okay, I'll come down. And I thought, I don't have anything to show her. I've got pictures of my bedroom I redecorated when I lived at home. I'll bring those. I'd built a mantle and tried to make the bedroom look federal and do the whole thing. And I brought them, and she flipped through them quickly and said, well, there's a lot you can do with the bedroom. And she handed them back to me and said, well, we don't really have anything right now. And I said, oh, okay then. Well, thank you. And I thought, well, I just bombed on that one. Walked out the door, left, got a phone call the next day. We'll try you on a trial basis for 3 days if you'll come and work. Now, in the meantime, I had gotten a job with a chain of stores in D.C. called Persnickety, which went out of business a few years later. But I thought, well, should I take the for sure job or take the 3-day chance? I said, I'm going to take the 3-day chance. So I did. And they didn't know what to do with someone like me. They had no idea what to do with me. They'd never had a display person. So I came in. And all the women said, well, go ahead. And here were this beautiful store, just room scene after room scene of elegant things that just needed unifying and neatening up. And I just started. And they all kind of stood around and watched me. And I didn't see the boss, the lady who had interviewed me. I hadn't seen her that day. And I got to work. At 3 o'clock, she came through with a cup of coffee and said, come with me. And I went to her office, and she said, what do you want from us? And I said, full-time work. And she said, can you wait 2 weeks? You have a job. But you can't do display only. I said, okay, I'll do sales, whatever it takes. I just wanted to be in this wonderful upscale world in Northwest Washington and work with these beautiful things. And so I think they fired somebody and gave me a full-time job. It felt terrible. And but I got over that. So I learned the ropes there. And slowly over time, as I began doing things, they thought we need him more time on the floor and less time in sales. And eventually I ended up getting to do that full time. There were a lot of interesting things that happened. What really clinched the deal was a simple thing. I did this little display one time, my first year working there, and I didn't see what was so great about it, but it was okay. And I came back in on Monday, and they said, Diane Feinstein came in and bought that entire thing the way you arranged it, all of it. I said, she did? And they said, yes. And I think that's when they started thinking, we've got something here. This guy, we're going to let him take this merchandise. And so little things like that would build you up, like it does in any job. And we would do room makeovers. What ended up happening was they would come into the store and say, the man who's doing the displays, can he come to my house? And they came to me, do you want to do that? And I said, sure. Can I do that? What do I do? And they said, you bring bags of merchandise and you take them to their house and you show them how it looks and then they buy everything. Okay. So that whole thing started. Then it turned into a bigger business with another lady, and I assisted her. But my real love ended up being just working on the sales floor, doing the things and doing the photo sessions for the ads.
Marvelous training.
Marvelous
for
training.
being an interior designer.
Do you know why, Kevin? Because I could work uninterrupted, creating room scenes day after day with no opinions. And no, not that they aren't important, but...
And no one trying to put a random chair right in the middle of it.
No one trying to put a random chair in it.
What was your first impression of Lewis?
My first impression of Lewis, I have to be honest about that. A friend bought a house here, and we were watching the Martha Stewart Christmas special, and they said, we just bought a house in Lewis. I said, where's that? It's near Rehoboth. Oh. Christmas came and went, and around February, I'm going to go down and see this place. So I went. Well, I drove in on Savannah Road off, and I just got to the light at Front Street. I didn't look left or right. And I just went over the bridge and stopped at the Dairy Queen and thought that was Lewis. I thought I'd hit town. And I said, this is Lewis? And it was February and there was snow everywhere. And I thought, oh, this can't be. And I saw the little strip centers and things. I thought, there's not much of a town. Going home. So I went to the lighthouse, got lunch. My mother was in the car. And there was a house in a real estate brochure that my partner at that time was flipping through. And he said, look at this. And I said, oh, we were on our way home. And he said, I'm going to call. So he called. He said, the guy said he'll show it to us now. Oh, I turned around. Then I saw Lewitt. We came in and I said, oh, there's a main street. And then I felt like a fool, thank God. Saw the house. It was cute. And I said, would you rent it for the summer? And they said, no. And then driving home, I said, I'm going to buy that house. I was 29 and just got in under the skin of my teeth. My partner at the time was very supportive about it and just made it. So that's how I ended up here on weekends.
So you did have a chance to see there was more than a Dairy Queen.
I did, and then more than a Dairy Queen.
Thank God for that.
Thank God. And now 27 years later, there's way more than we ever could have imagined.
You've had the courage to send gifts to people you meet, and some have led to absolutely amazing experiences.
Yes. Yeah. Who do you want to talk about first?
Well, you have a pillow, I know.
I have a pillow. Yeah, I have a needlepoint pillow in my living room that belonged to the movie actress Bette Davis, the old actress Bette Davis. That happened. I'd been a fan of her since I was a kid. I used to watch her on talk shows and things in the 80s. Her assistant wrote a book, and I bought it the day it came out, and I sent it to the assistant and asked her to sign it for me, and she sent it back. And she had given me one of Bette Davis's book plates as a little gift inside. So I sent her one of the fragrance candles from my shop. And about 10 days later, I get a phone call, and I'm looking at my cell phone, and it says Beverly Hills, California. And I thought, that can't be a robocall. Well, it was Catherine Cermak. And I was in shock, and I said, how did you find me? She said, I looked you up, and I watched your YouTube videos, and I liked them, and I think Miss Davis would have liked you. And we developed a friendship across country via telephone. And we talk frequently. And I've helped her do some long distance decorating via FaceTime of her home. And I would see things that belonged to Bette Davis in her home. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's her sofa. She said, yes, I still have it, And she said to me, I have a pillow that belonged to her, and would you help me get the backing redone on it if I ship it to you from California? Of course, I said. So we do it, and I ship it back. And I said, Kath, the pillow's in the mail. And she said, no. Oh, I was giving that to you for your birthday. Well, I'd seen a photo of Bette Davis with the pillow, so I found it, and she sent it back. And I said, did you ever notice? Were you there the day they took this picture? She said, I've never seen that photo, but it's great provenance. So I'm proud to own that. She also sent me Christmas ornaments that had been on Bette Davis's Christmas tree. Just little things, little charming things like that. And I thought, who would have thought, One candle would do that kind of thing. But the funny thing about the pillow, when I sent it to be redone, I didn't tell them who it had belonged to. And I came back to pick it up. And when she was putting it in the bag, I said, do you know who owned that pillow? And I told her, and she said, my God, that explains it. We could smell cigarette smoke the entire time we were redoing this pillow, and we couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I said, that's some famous nicotine you're sucking in there. But anyway, that got to be the big joke. But anyhow, that happened back in around 1993. I got Martha Stewart's gardening book, and I noticed in one of the photographs, you could see her home address on a label of chickens she had gotten shipped.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm. And I turned the book around, and I got a magnifying glass, and I said, I'm going to write her a note. I'm going to send her a gift. So I made her a topiary, and I packed the whole thing up and shipped it to Westport, Connecticut. Within about 2 weeks, my partner at the time said, she's coming to Hunt Valley to do a seminar. You want to go? I said, sure. So we bought tickets, went up on a Sunday. She did her speech, did her talk, came down into the audience, and I jumped up and went over to her. And I said, it's so nice to meet you, et cetera, et cetera. I said, I sent you something. And she said, the topiary. And then we started talking, and she thanked me. And we were sitting there, and she signed my book, and she said, "Do you ever come to the Hamptons?" And I said, "I haven't been yet." She said, "Would you like to come? I'm having a party at my house for the East Hampton Historical Society." Pinch me, right? Sure, we'll buy tickets to that. And we stood and talked. So that was in June, flew up. I was petrified. I didn't know anyone. And all I was thinking is, I don't know these people. I'm about to go to Martha Stewart's house for a party. Oh, God, what if she doesn't remember me? I have to tell you, with all the drone people do about Martha Stewart, I'm going to tell you, she was perfect. She treated me beautifully, introduced me to her sister, her mother. Oh, and another woman. She said, "This is my friend Ina. She just opened a store called the Barefoot Contessa." And I looked at Ina Garten, and I'm like, "Oh, that's nice." Anyway, and then can you imagine? So of course, I was glued to Martha the whole time, and I had to, let her go. But her sister, her mother, they were just lovely. I remember we walked into the backyard, and there was Billy Joel and Christy Brinkley. And oh my God, there's Billy Joel. I didn't know what to say to him. Well, we stayed for a while, and it was time to leave. And as we were walking up the driveway, I was walking ahead, and Billy Joel was standing there by himself, and he just looked at me. And I thought, well, say something. So I said hello. And then Christy walked up, and we all ended up walking, the four of us, to our cars together, parked on the road. They were great. "Where are you from? Da, 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 da. How do you know Martha?" Blah, blah, blah. Don't really know Martha, but I explained it, pretended I was part of the crowd up there just to get by. The following year, Martha Stewart invited me to Turkey Hill in Westport, Connecticut, to a fundraiser. Now, that was the holy grail if you're a Martha Stewart fan. That's the house that I'd been looking at in books. So went up, got there. She remembered me. Her mother jumped up. "You're from Washington, D.C. I remember you." Wonderful. The best part of it was I decided to take a walk around the grounds, and Martha was walking her dogs, and she joined me and took me through the gardens by myself. Wasn't that sweet?
That is.
And we talked about things, and I just remember thinking, oh my God, I can't believe this. So
when you were walking with it, were you thinking in your own mind, asking questions about why did you do this here or why there? Or?
A little bit, it was like I was talking to.
You weren't grilling her. You were just trying to be polite.
No, I was trying to be polite. And of course, I thought anything she did was absolute perfection. So it was just an honor to be strolling with her. I wish I had some photos from that. I do have some photos from that day with her, but not then. But it was a great experience, and she couldn't have been a finer person to me. She really was. It was a lot of fun.
It's amazing about the power of gifts.
Well, the power of gifts and the power of reaching out. We're all people, and it never pays off being shy. Never. So you have to just kind of step forward and make it happen. And even though you don't know what you're about to make happen, or if anything, but if you like something, or you want to meet somebody, or you want to compliment them, do it. Just go ahead and do it. I wish I'd done it more with other people, but there's still time.
I know you enjoy working behind the scenes here in Lewis.
Yes.
But you've also played a major role in the development of two of our most memorable Christmas traditions. Some say the season doesn't start in Lewis until the lights are up on the telephone poles.
Right.
You had a role in that.
Yes, it all started from people were not happy with the Christmas decorations that were up, which I kind of liked. They had kind of a vintage charm. They just needed a facelift. So I went to Brenda Brady, who was in charge of it. Ted Becker directed me to her, and I went to her, and she helped me. And I said, why don't we get a crew together and start to fluff these things? And they gave me a little money, and we fixed them up. And we used them a few more years, but there was still an undercurrent of getting them changed. And they wanted to do something that didn't require a lot of maintenance. So the snowflakes were perfect. And I said, well, instead of doing the same snowflake on every pole, let's buy a couple of different designs and alternate them. So that was my contribution. And then we started fundraising. And that was a lot of fun. And Carol DeSabatino, Sharon Dardine, Brenda, Laurie Mills, they all jumped in, and we formed a little team. And we all worked together. And we never had to hold one fundraiser. The money just came. And year after year, we did it. I think, about 9 years. And they just kept growing and growing. And they were on every pole. And the poor guys at the BPW, I felt bad for them because it just every year there were 10 more they had to hang. So this went from a 4-hour job to a 3-day job for these poor guys. But they did it, and they do a beautiful job. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. I think we all are.
You should be. And then you were also involved in the Christmas tour.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was brief. That was to help out with it. And then COVID hit. And I said, well, you're going to have to cancel it. They're not going to want anybody in their homes. Well, I thought, wait a minute. What if we film it like a tour like you see on a real estate thing? And we narrate it and have Christmas music. So they agreed to it, and we did it. And I guess it worked. It was a new idea. People weren't quite used to this, what we pay and we watch it at home. But a few people had parties and had it on their smart TV, and we did it that way for 2 years. And it worked out. And now it's gone back live, and they're doing a great job with it. So someday when I'm not working in design and retail, I'll get back to more of these volunteer things when I can really give it the time I want to.
You've obviously had a huge role. Jeff, you could have lived anywhere in this country, given what you do. What is it about this community that led you to making Lewis your home?
It just happened, coming here for the weekends and then getting away from the city, which I realized I was more of a country boy than I thought. I was raised right outside of Washington, D.C. But, this is where, you grow where you're planted. And I never really thought about going. I mean, you enjoy traveling and doing other things, but if something happens, I might end up somewhere else someday. But right now, Lewis has everything you kind of want. You've got the beach, good people. The town's not too big. It's wonderful to live in a place where you have the visitors coming through. You meet a lot of wonderful people from all over the place, especially if you're running a shop or a restaurant or wherever, anything like that. And then it gets quiet in the winter. So it's kind of nice. People ask me, did you go on vacation? And I say, no, I live in a vacation town.
So if you look back on your life, you look back on this career you've had, it sounds a bit fortuitous. You had opportunities pop out of nowhere, not that you were expecting it, and then you took advantage of them.
Oh, yeah. Opportunities are exciting. You can never be afraid of them. I always feel bad when I see somebody who's afraid of an opportunity, because you just got to try it. You know what? You never not dare to hang yourself. You've always got to dare to hang yourself. In certain situations, it's true. You've got to. You can't be afraid to fail. So many people are. It's horrible to fail, and we've all failed at things in our lives. But that's how you grow back up again. That's how you know. We all have limitations to a point.
Have you found in the creative world that once you really fail, publicly, horribly, it sort of eliminates the fear of failure because you've been there. It's not that bad. You survived.
That's a good point, Kevin. Yeah, I think so. Sure. You hope it never happens, but also in this business, you're dependent on the abilities and services of other people. And that, I think that's common in a lot of things. So that can be challenging, especially in the last several years. But you know something? If you're honest and you tell the truth and you communicate with your client or your customer and just keep them in the loop, you're fine. Yeah, it's about that, totally about that. Just don't leave anybody in the dark about what's going on or what, anything like that. Mm-hmm.
Jeff, thanks for joining us today. This has been a fun, fabulous, funny tour through your life. And simply put, we're lucky to have you as part of Lewis.
Thank you. And you don't have to thank me. I loved it.
And thanks to our sponsors, the sister restaurants Kindle and Half Full, who always delight, no matter your culinary hankering. And thanks to you for being a listener and for sharing your thoughts and comments. They're always welcome, especially the complimentary ones. Have a wonderful day, and please, if you can, take a moment to enjoy the remarkable hamlet called Lewis, which some of us are lucky enough to call home. Till next time, this has been We and Lewis, the podcast.